I like to fish many different ways, but if I had to pick a favorite, it would be wading boulder fields. Shallow boulder fields, fishing for striped bass is my favorite. Bubbleweed fields, wading around in an environment where the fish are, to me, is the ultimate. It's very challenging. As long as I'm physically able, I'll do it. It's not easy fishing. You have to go out. It's a lot of work, depending on the conditions you're fishing. But the striped bass spend a lot of time in shallow water, and I love catching fish in less than 10 feet of water. And there's a lot of big fish in that shallow water. A lot of people will go right past shallow water and not realize that there's fish in 3 or 4 feet of water at times, and they'll go right into the deep bowls on the other sides of the boulder fields. But boulder field fishing, to me, is the ultimate. Most memorable is probably one of the greatest nights of fishing in my lifetime. As you know, most surfcasters fish all of their lives to try and catch a 50-pound striped bass. I mean, it's kind of a unofficial measuring stick for surf fishermen. Everybody tries to pursue it. People cry when they get a 49-pounder because it wasn't a pound over. In November of 1987, I had one of those nights where I was able to take 2 striped bass over 50 pounds, and to get one is elation. To get another one, less than 12 hours later was just amazing, and it's just one of those highlights. And up until that time, when you caught a big fish, it was a once in a while event. When you're in a bite like that, and where there's fish of that size coming in regularly, it's a very unique time. You have to pinch yourself at the time to believe it's happening, and it's still hard to believe. And it was so good that you thought it would keep going, but it did tail off eventually. Well, the gear, basically what we were using is straight lima glass rods, no graphite yet during the early years, or at least I didn't have a graphite rod at that point. 704s, 706s, pens, and a few of the guys had cracks. Drags were always an issue, especially when you hook a big fish. A faulty drag can create a lost fish, as you know. The Penn 704 and 706 drags, when they got wet, were notorious for skipping. And so with better gear, if we would have had advanced all reels at that time of my life, I got a feeling I may have added a few more milestones to my career. But besides the rod and reel and the line, basically I use the same type of line today, and the rods, I use graphite now, but I think I could do fine with regular glass. But the big advancement is with plugs. The plugs are built a little bit better. I think that period of striped bass history made and allowed plug manufacturers to make improvements to plugs. For instance, going from screw eye to wire through, because of that school of fish. Those kind of gear advancements, stronger treble hooks, allowed us, or would have allowed us, some better opportunities to land a lot more bigger fish. Fish plugs at the time, the first needlefish were all screw eye. Boone's Classic, line sider needlefish were not really built for striped bass fishing. They're built for fishing down south to catch snook and weakfish and sea trout and whatever. We found out about them. They were a very good sand eel imitation, and they did fall apart if you caught a fish or two on them. If they were the only plug in your bag, you tried to re-screw it together. Some of the guys would be a little bit ingenious and take the screw eyes out, epoxy them with 2-ton epoxy, and then screw them back in before you started fishing. That helped a little bit. But again, the fish were just so outsized. It was they destroy hooks, they destroy tackle. The plugs were not built to the best of their abilities at the time. The fish lures are my favorite lure, based on the fact that I was able to use them to great effect for the highlight of my career, which is Block Island striped bass fishing in the 80s. They were the lure of choice, and they caught fish very efficiently. And my favorite lures were a super striped needlefish, which first came out in wood and then quickly evolved after a year into plastic. Donnie Musso came out with them. This lure, the super striped needlefish, revolutionized striped bass fishing on Block Island. Block Island, it was basically, I call it the proving ground of needlefish plugs. You brought your needlefish to Block Island, and if they could pass all the tests, like the Musso Super Strike did, that was a winner. And this is probably responsible for more 50-pound bass for guys, their first 50, because of Donnie's improved plug. Whereas if a guy would have hooked a fish like that with a boon or a classic needle, he may have lost the fish. On a super strike, chances are if he doesn't straighten the hooks and destroy the hooks on you, you're going to land that fish, and because the plug is not going to fall apart. And so the super strike needlefish is the first one I like, and then Gibbs came out with a wire through shortly after Donnie's, and their plug just as effective. A different application with needlefish, but just as effective, and it's wire through. It doesn't get destroyed by large striped bass, and it's a great plug. When I started many years ago, your information was word of mouth and a telephone. Now, of course, you have the internet, you've got phones that are computers. Technology is huge. Information sharing is huge. You don't need necessarily to have your fishing partner give you the gouge, because you can almost find out second, third, fourth hand about the gouge. That has many advantages, but it can be a huge disadvantage, and it can be it can create problems with overcrowding and things like that. As far as good bites, you try to keep them quiet. A lot of the newer guys kind of share information, and that could be a problem when you get to the more old school thinking like mine, where you kind of kept things a little quiet. You shared it with a small grapevine of friends, but these friends, you had to trust them to not spill the beans somewhere else.